Okay, so look at I got. Let's see if I can look new Scott Hall over there. Yeah, Hurricane Harvey has done quite a bit of considerable damage along the Gulf Coast. There's no doubt about that. There's a lot of people displaced. There's a lot of power out. There's a lot of businesses that have had to shut down their businesses, and it's going to affect their quarterly reports coming up, and it's going to affect their business going forward. Some of them pretty substantially. First and foremost, here at Wall Street Breakdown, I want to say that we send our condolences to everybody who lost your property or anything, whatever happened. I mean, it's terrible when these kind of things happen, and they're so inevitable and it's so unavoidable. But it is what it is. So we're going to take a look at a couple of companies. This might encompass a few different. We're going to cover a lot of sectors and stuff. This might cover a few different things. We just want to try to give everybody an idea of what your portfolio might take a beating on if you happen to be in it. Just give you a little rundown, give you an idea of what type of industries and what companies in those industries are really overly exposed in these areas, and for the reasons that obviously we talked about with the storm, their operations could be shut down inevitably and shut down now ultimately for an undetermined amount of time. Right? So what we want to look at is some of these companies. So I think the biggest statistic that I've found so far in relation to this Hurricane Harvey is that one third, 37% actually of the United States' chemical production, petrochemical production, is done in that area. And this includes major companies like Exxon, who's actually affected on the refinery side as well, Occidental and Olin Corp. And these companies, Occidental, Olin Corp, these companies all make choline and caustic sodas, and what those do is they make vinyl and PVC piping, and it's involved in a lot of manufacturing for a lot of different products in a lot of different fields. So I mean, this really ends up slowing a lot of stuff down. And then on the flip side of that, ethylene is actually the most used petrochemical out there, and it makes a lot of plastics, right? A lot of food garbage bags, Ziploc bags, that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's very, very substantial in that sense. And like I was saying, Exxon, Occidental, Olin Corp, some of the most exposed in that area. Westlake Chemical actually has most of their production far enough away that they haven't been hit near as much. I'm sure you've had a lot of employees not making it to work, and all sorts of stuff happening because just in the area. But so they're just Westlake is has been touched a little less than some of the other companies that are in the U.S. chemical production, especially in the choline or chlorine, ethylene, and caustic soda. I mean, this stuff is vitally important in manufacturing, and this stuff's getting shut down left, right, and center. The losses, they say, in total for Hurricane Harvey aren't going to be near as much. And I mean, take that for what it's worth, right? Does that give you any solace? Do you feel better if your house washed away? It's not going to cost as much to fix everything. But just for perspective, it's not going to cost as much as Sandy, which was $36 billion, around $36 billion, and Katrina, which was $80 billion. It's not going to be near as much as that, but still, it's going to be more than a drop in the bucket. And for anybody that is affected by this, the emotional toll it probably takes is so substantial that any financial toll is probably relatively negligible at this point. So some of the other companies that are really being affected, a lot of restaurants obviously aren't going to be, and the restaurants that are most exposed would be your Texas Roadhouse, Sonic, Ruby Tuesdays, Dave and Buster's, Jack in the Box, Del Taco. There's a lot of companies that are exposed in this area. There's a lot of them. They've got maybe a lot of their business is done there. A good segment of their businesses are there, or it could be they're just in a dominant area. They happen to be something that's there a lot, even though they may be more spread out. It could be one or the other, right? It could be where they're really segmented in this area heavily as their corporate, structure, or they could be here just as this is a place that they thrive, but they're also elsewhere, so it affects companies in a different way. Some are going to be able to spread the losses out a little bit better because some will be a little less exposed in a corporate structure, but it's still going to be effective on the bottom line of all these publicly traded companies. So RV stocks actually are up. They were up on the day. Winnebago, Patrick Industries, LCI Industries, they were all up. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably had some money who decided, you know what, I'm just going to buy a fifth wheel, buy an RV, make this a lot easier, get out of here right now. I'm sure that probably did happen, but I would imagine the amount is negligible. And if you're really hinging your bets on stuff like this, I don't know, the karma making money like that probably isn't that great. I'm not too sure. There's a lot of insurers that are really exposed. Insurance is a big business and people are going to pay out the nose for this. And that's just the way insurance works. Some of the insurers that have a lot of exposure, a lot of policies in these areas happen to be Travelers Insurance, Allstate, Progressive, and National General. These are going to be the ones that maybe hit the hardest, and we're going to see companies, insurers, a lot of time make really, really good money. But when these type of catastrophes happen, and all of a sudden, a company that has a lot of exposure in that one area, they can get slammed for a long time, and it can be a long road to hoe to come back from. So some of those insurers you might want to keep an eye on. If you have any of these companies that we've talked about in your portfolio, and any other company really with any relation to that part of the United States, take a look at what you're doing, right? Like these are the times that it's time to assess. Maybe not reassess. Maybe there's nothing to reassess, but definitely assess what you've got going on and weigh any kind of sector intersection between, well, this company's headquartered over here, and I mean, how could that affect it? Well, you know what? When things sometimes go down the daisy chain, it takes a lot of, they touch into a lot of different sectors in a lot of different ways. And you need to see how that's going to affect deliveries of one company that does something over here that's affected by a company that's making PVC piping. But they happen to be making PVC piping down here. And when they all meet together somewhere else, but you need both products, and that's not happening, then a company that doesn't look like they're actually affected by it actually are directly affected by it. So always be taking a look at what you've got in your portfolio currently and see how this all affects everything. I mean, there's no two ways around it. You're going to have to be diligent about this kind of stuff when these type of incidents happen and you have any kind of major stock pullbacks, a major event in the world, a war, this calamity. I mean, this is where you definitely step back and just take a look at what you have. Make sure you're in the right spot. I mean, this isn't something that's going to carry on, obviously. We're not going to see this storm linger on for weeks and weeks. This isn't a war that's going to play out or anything, but still, there still is going to be some residual effects. And the quicker you're on top of things and understanding how things might affect things, the better you're going to feel, the more in control you're going to feel, and the more in control you're going to be of ultimately your finances, which you work very hard on. Some of the other stuff that's affected by Hurricane Harvey is the Eagle Ford Shale. The Eagle Ford Shale is, there's a lot of fracking and stuff going on there. And some companies, while there's a lot of drillers, a lot of oil drillers, gas drillers that are working there, there's some companies that are very, very exposed. There's some that only work there exclusively, publicly traded companies. So we're talking about Carrizo Oil, Sanchez Energy, Wild Horse Resources. These are some of the bigger full exposure or almost full exposure into the Eagle Ford Shale, which ultimately has been, I mean, it's out of commission at the moment. At the moment, this has been run amok, and that it'll all come back. But you have to understand that these quarterly reports coming up are going to reflect this considerably, and the bills don't stop having to get paid at these companies if the revenues stopped coming in. So it's going to affect things ultimately. We've seen a lot of refineries have to be shut down, major refineries, Petrobras, Exxon, Royal Dutch Shell, Chevron, Phillips 66. I mean, this has been a terrible storm, regardless of the monetary loss number that they're estimating. It's still going on. They're still all the way to the East Coast now getting storms. It's just bad weather. I mean, it's been a poor weekend for the people in Houston and the Gulf Coast area, and here at Wall Street Breakdown, we feel terrible that anybody has to go through anything even remotely close to this. This is not what you need. We've been having a good summer. The market's been up. Everybody's been making money. Everybody's been happy. It's been a good time. We went through a good earnings season. We're going to bounce back from this. You can bet on that. If you think one little storm is going to keep us down, it's not. We've suffered storms in the financial market. We've suffered storms in real life. We've suffered storms everywhere a storm could brew. But there's no way that any storm is going to be taking us down. What we're going to be doing is finding the best investments going forward, and we're going to be thriving. We want to thank you for watching Wall Street Breakdown. My name's Cody. Click the subscribe button. If you've been affected by Hurricane Harvey, stay strong.